The most important thing about the fires in New South Wales is the fight to keep people and property safe. Meanwhile, though, some politicians are going nuts. One is Barnaby Joyce, a National MP, who went very low about 2 people who died in the fire, people who lived in a shire led by a Greens mayor.
And the crazy thing there, Kieran, is I acknowledge that the 2 people who died were most likely people who voted for the Green Party, so I'm not going to start attacking them. That's the last thing I want to do. What I wanted to concentrate is on the policies that we can mitigate these tragedies happening again in the future. That's where I'm going to focus.
That was somewhere he should not have gone. Meanwhile, the Greens today were frankly mad, blaming the Morrison government for not changing the world's climate and stopping all such bushfires.
Barely 11 days after the Port Arthur massacre, John Howard came up with a gun control agreement. Scott Morrison could have a national climate agreement before the end of the year.
You are no better than a bunch of arsonists. Borderline arsonists.
Senator Steele-John.
And you should be ashamed.
Arsonists because they haven't stopped coal exports, therefore fires. You wonder what planet these people live on. Joining me is the panel, Liberal Senator James Patterson, broadcaster Jane Marwick from 6PR in Perth. James, what do you make of Barnaby Joyce, first of all?
Well, Andrew, I don't think anyone in politics really today has covered themselves in glory. I think we would all benefit from turning down the volume and lifting the tone a bit when we're talking about the fires. I have no reluctance at all about debating the various and complicated policy issues that are likely to come out of this lesson, but there are people who right now are fleeing for their lives. There are children who are being evacuated from schools. There are people who don't know whether they're going to be returning to their home or not. It's like the patient is still on the operating table and we're in the middle of the surgery, and there are people who are rushing to do the autopsy because they think that the autopsy will prove that they were right about a debate. It's really, frankly, very unseemly.
Well said, and I think some people are trying to get attention by being more extreme than the other. Jane Marwick, the Greens, what do you think they're up to, calling Scott Morrison arsonist, apparently in this insane belief that he could stop bushfires just by, you know, cutting our emissions, as easy as that?
Yeah, absolutely predictable and extraordinary. I agree with James about the rhetoric, but I don't mind us talking about the policies. The Greens have got a lot to answer for when we talk about these fuel loads. And Andrew, on Saturday, we heard from witnesses who said some of those fuel loads were up to their shoulders. Now, we know that so few areas are now being backburned adequately, and we can see what happens when they're not. I was raised by a family who'd fought a lot of bushfires, Andrew, and my grandfather was born in 1901, and we grew up knowing a lot about bushfires. So Jordon Steele-John and his counterparts in the Greens calling this current government arsonists. I mean, as you pointed out yesterday, if we shut down Australia today, would it make one iota of difference? And it simply would not. I think his intervention is absolutely disgraceful.
But James, I agree. I mean, this does not, as I demonstrated yesterday, have anything to do with global warming. But the fuel loads thing, I'm getting contacted by firefighters, by former fire captains. I spoke yesterday to one of Australia's top fire experts. Again and again we're hearing fuel loads. Now, what really frustrates me as someone who sat in coroner's hearings after one of Victoria's disastrous fires, every time we have a disaster like this, we get the inquest and we get the coroner saying, cut fuel loads in forests. You've got to do more controlled burns. And again, we're finding that has not been done. What can Parliament do to ensure that the message this time gets through?
Andrew, I'm very reluctant to decide what the cause was of some fires that haven't even started yet, but are feared might be starting in the next 24 to 48 hours. All of the focus of the government here in Canberra, and I know of the state governments that are affected, are about getting people out of harm's way, limiting the damage of these fires and preserving life and property. There will be an unlimited amount of time to have a conversation about controlled burning and fire loads and even climate change if that's what people are interested in talking about. But right now we're literally in the middle of a crisis, and the Prime Minister has spent his day being briefed on these matters and considering the federal policy responses, which the Defence Minister shared with us in question time might include calling up the Army Reserve to assist in dealing with it. These are unprecedented times, and I think that's got to be the focus rather than apportioning the blame for some fires that haven't even happened, let alone been put out yet.